my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking all about the best blurring powders. So if you are into that skin blurring, Instagram filtered look, these are going to be the best powders for you. And I wanted to make this video because if you don't know, I have recently done a giant declutter where I got rid of, I'm going to say 3/4 of my makeup collection. Unfortunately, the filming of it did not work. It was very blurry. I'm going to go over some products I got rid of because I know you guys were curious about that. But I did get rid of a majority of my powders that I had that I just was not using because either they were just basic powders that weren't blurring, and I just really like that filtered skin look. I want my skin to have that pore blurring, blurred effect, so that skin filtered, that softening effect on the skin. Your skin kind of looks creamy. It just looks pore perfecting. It just looks really beautifully enhanced, and it's not necessarily that I like powders with a lot of coverage. I actually prefer a powder to not have coverage because then it's going to alter the color of your foundation, but I just want to have that beautiful pore blurred effect. That's just my favorite kind of look. So let's just get started into the powders, and I'm going to try and declutter some of these powders as well as I talk through them because I want to keep my collection to like 5 to 10 products per category max 10. I went a little bit over on the foundation, so I'm going to try really hard with the powders. I'm just going to start off with one of my favorites, and this is the Cle De Peau Refining Pressed Powder. If you are looking for a very beautiful blurred powder, but that is going to add no color, no coverage to your foundation, it's just going to blur the look of your skin, but everything else is going to remain as is when you finish off your makeup, you're going to want to look for this Cle De Peau Refining Pressed Powder. I really love this powder because it's one of the only pressed powders that works underneath the eye as well. I can actually use this as an all-in-one powder, so I'll take a little bit, apply it under my eyes because this is the most finely milled, refined powder I have ever tried. And because of that, you can use it under the eyes, which is just very unique. It's just so soft and velvety smooth when you feel it. It does have a little bit of a white cast, as you can see, but when you apply it onto the skin, I don't see that white cast. However, I don't have the deepest skin in the world, so obviously that's not going to affect me as much as someone that has a deeper complexion. I do wish they'd release this in a darker translucent powder just because I do wonder if this might be a little bit ashy if you had a deeper skin tone. But I love this. It is absolutely amazing. It does not look like powder at all on the skin. So if you want a powder that's going to blur your skin, but is not going to be detectable as a powder, this is an imperceptible. You cannot see it on the skin. So this is just one of my favorite powders, especially when I'm going for that really natural, beautiful makeup look where I don't want you to be able to see product sitting on the skin. This is what I'm going to reach for. Now, Cle De Peau did recently reformulate their loose powder, and their loose powder formula was never previously available in Canada. So when it first released in the US, I thought we weren't going to get it. However, we recently got it, except when I went to purchase it, it was available at Shoppers Drug Mart because now Cle De Peau is available there, and they offer 20% off about once a month. And during the 20% off, all the full sizes sold out. So I just purchased the refills in both of these because I wanted to try out both the colors to see which one I enjoyed. So don't mind that this is not in the normal compact that Cle De Peau sells it in because they only had the refills available for purchase. So I just decided, whatever, I'm going to get the refills. And I actually kind of like them. Like, I feel like that would be way better for traveling than like a compact, like say like this. I mean, it would probably be better if it was smaller, but I did pick up the refill in the shade 1 and 2, and I have tried out both of these powders, and I was really worried because when I swatched this, I noticed that there was a little bit of like an intermittent shimmer when I swatched it on my hand. And so I was like, oh great, I'm gonna have to return this because I don't like when you can see shimmer particles sitting on the skin. However, when you blend this into the skin, even if I just apply it on the skin like this in like a pouncing fashion, you do not see that shimmer particle on the skin. So it is very interesting. Like, this is the powder I'm wearing today, but even in direct sunlight, like there's a window right in front of me, I cannot see any of that intermittent shimmer, which completely turns me off of powder and I will instantly hate it. So really happy that this does not have that effect. This is basically the loose powder version of this translucent powder, the pressed powder. I think that they do virtually the exact same thing. They look very similar. I do think the loose powder has the tendency, if you go in with a little bit too much, it will look more powdery on the skin. But that's just because it's way easy to get the correct amount of product when you're going in with a translucent powder like this, just because it's a little bit easier to grab. Where a loose powder, you have to be a little bit more careful. However, that's just me being very nitpicky and trying to decipher the differences between the two. However, I don't really think there's a huge difference, and it might be better to get the loose powder because if you have a deeper complexion, they do have the shade 2 available, which is just a deeper color powder. It's like a darker translucent powder. It's like more of a peachy tan shade. I wouldn't say it's actually that deep, but it would work better if you have a darker skin tone. I can use both of them, so obviously they should release a darker shade. This one is really good all over my face just because it's a little bit deeper. But if I had to choose just one shade, I would repurchase the shade number 1. I am naturally very, very fair. Like, for reference, the shade 0N from Dior is too dark for my natural skin tone. I tried to pick up a foundation in my natural skin tone because I just realized I don't have one. And I picked up 0N from Dior thinking that that would work because it's their lightest shade. No, it's too dark for me. So that's how pale I naturally am. So, and I'm trying to wear a little bit less fake tan. So the shade 1 just works better for me. Unless I have a fresh fake tan, then obviously shade 2 does work. But I just prefer shade number 1 in general. It's a little bit more brightening, but it's not a crazy difference. I don't notice a huge difference on the face. Again, when my fake tan's fading, I definitely prefer number 1, but I still feel like I think that shade number 1 looks just a little bit better on the skin. Shade number 2 would be great if you have a medium complexion though. I just think this shade number 1's made for like light medium skin tones, and then if you're medium deep, you probably would want to get the shade number 2. But this is just a beautiful blurring powder. It is very lightweight. It is very comfortable on the skin. It does not feel heavy. It does not look like a powder. Sometimes I get worried with loose powders because they are more like heavy duty powders, but this truly looks so skin-like. It does not look like powder at all. It has completely blurred any pores on my skin. It just looks so flattering and so skin-like and so beautiful. So if you're just someone that prefers a loose powder, I would definitely recommend the Cle De Peau one. My mom, for example, she prefers to have a loose and a pressed powder on hand. And she said, because I told her that I tried this and that I think it's the best loose powder I've ever tried, she is going to pick up the Cle De Peau loose powder. And then she also, this is her favorite pressed powder, the Cle De Peau refining pressed powder. I know a lot of you guys like to know my mom's favorites. She currently has not tried the Cle De Peau loose powder because she's in Italy, and otherwise I would get her to try it and let you guys know her thoughts. But really, really fantastic. If I had to choose one powder to suggest you guys to get for that blurring, soft focus, filtered effect, definitely the Cle De Peau powder's pressed and loose version. And then I'm just going to expand upon that because there's been some really gorgeous powders that have been released, and Dior reformulated their powder, and this is the Dior Forever Nude Matte Filter in the shade 02 Light. This shade works the best for me. I think it runs a little bit dark, but this is definitely my best match. And this is just a really beautiful, finely milled pressed powder that does such a good job of blurring the skin in a very subtle way. I would say the Cle De Peau does a better job. It's just a little bit more blurring, but this is just a really beautiful lightweight powder. Like you can see, it's a little harder to swatch. I feel like the Dior powders are really interesting because they are a baked powder, so they are harder to pick up with a brush. You might want to use something a little bit more dense, but you can get that filtered look if you just use a fluffy brush as well. It will just give you a lighter application. But I think I really like this powder because it gives you such a light application because it is a little harder pressed into the pan. So it just looks really skin-like. It looks really natural. There's something a little bit waxy about this powder. It's really hard to explain unless you see it in person, but it is a little bit of a waxy powder. And I think because of that waxiness, it just looks more skin-like on the complexion. It doesn't leave behind a sheen, like there are no shimmer particles to this, but it's also not completely matte on the skin either. It does give you a little bit of color, but it's not enough to actually like alter the color of your foundation underneath. It will just give you like a hint. It's like less than a skin tint level of coverage. It's very, very light, but I think this is a really beautiful powder, and it's kind of my second place powder. If you, maybe you can't access Cle De Peau, maybe Cle De Peau is too light for you. Maybe you just don't want to buy Cle De Peau. Dior would be my second choice pick. And then I also love this Chantecaille Perfect Blur Finishing Powder. If you're looking for like the ultimate blur, this Chantecaille Perfect Blur Finishing Powder is going to be your favorite. This is limited edition packaging. I actually have it in the permanent packaging, which is the pebble packaging. And this is just a really beautiful, more heavy duty powder, I want to say, which is interesting for Chantecaille because I feel like Chantecaille is more of like a skincare makeup hybrid company. And a lot of their products are very like, you know, the Chantecaille Future Skin Gel Foundation. That's very light coverage, very natural on the skin, very natural on the complexion. However, this is a bit more of a heavy duty powder. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit more coverage, a little bit more color than this Dior powder, that's going to actually perfect the skin by changing the color of the foundation, by adding just a little bit more coverage. So if you're someone that struggles with discoloration or acne or post-blemish pigmentation, this is going to be the powder you want to reach for because it's just going to offer you a little bit more protection because it's adding that little bit more coverage. It's also a little bit more matte on the skin, where these powders are more of that skin finish and more undetectable on the skin. I'm not going to say this is like detectable on the skin, but it's just a little bit more present than those previous powders where you literally can't see makeup on your skin. This one you can detect a little bit on the skin, and for that reason, I use this powder for special occasions. Like I'm going to a gala in November and I'm going to be reaching for this powder just because it really makes sure that your foundation stays in place for hours. If I want my makeup to be super long wearing, if it is a special occasion, if I want it to be a little bit more bulletproof, I will reach for this powder because I know that my makeup is just going to stay in place. But not only that, it really does perfect the pores in the front of your skin. Like everything just looks so beautifully blurred, finely milled. It truly looks like an Instagram filter. You have applied one on your skin because it's adding that little bit of coverage. So again, it's just a little bit more heavy duty. And I think this is going to be really great if you have combo or oily skin. I think this would be more your daily powder. If you are someone that just has oil breaking through quite regularly and you need to touch up, this is a very strong powder and it is more matte in comparison to these other two where you'd probably have to touch up more often if you were using these powders. But if you have an oily skin type, I think you will love this. Again, this is a powder that my mom loves to use for special occasions as well. Like this is her more heavy duty powder as it is for me as well. Like when she's going out for dinner or events, this is the powder she reaches for as well. And it's just a really gorgeous powder that I love to have on hand. I'm just going to go over all my matte powders first. Another powder that's really gorgeous is this Sisley. This is the Blur Expert powder. It's the Perfecting Smoothing Powder. And that's exactly what it does. It perfects the skin. It smooths the skin. And again, it has that more waxy texture that like the Dior does. They remind me very, very much of each other. It also has that similar color payoff where it's very light. It's going to add just a subtle, subtle bit of color, the tiniest bit of coverage, but it's not really going to alter the foundation that much. Mine is in the shade 1. When I bought this, they didn't have 2 shades, but now there are 2 shades available, the shade 0 and the shade 1. I have the shade 1. I actually would prefer the shade 0, but that was just not available to me at the time. But my favorite way to use this powder is actually not using it as a powder. If I do use this, I use it more as a touch-up powder just because I find that it fades faster in comparison to the Cle De Peau and the Dior powder. It just doesn't leave me as pore perfected, so I will have to touch up with this powder if I use it as my powder. However, if you use this underneath your foundation as a primer, it is so gorgeous and you'll look like a porcelain doll with no pores. It will just blur your skin so completely. So I love to do that for a special occasion. I'll go in with this as my primer, and then over top, I'll go in with like the Cle De Peau powder once I've finished applying my foundation. But this is just a great primer, which seems so odd. So you just apply this, you stamp it onto your skin. I don't stamp it all over the complexion. I just keep it where I have pores. So right in the center of the skin here, over my nose, maybe in the middle of my chin, middle of the forehead, but I leave the rest of my face, like the outskirts of my face, completely blank, and like the tops of my cheekbones I'll leave blank. And then you go in with your foundation and things just look so beautifully blurred and your foundation will last longer. It's just such a gorgeous look. But again, I'm not going to use this on an everyday basis. This is purely for special occasions. So because of that, I don't use this powder all the time. It's something that I use like maybe once a month. So I definitely don't go through it very often, but this is my second compact. I have gone completely through one. It's just a beautiful powder. And then we also have this Givenchy Prisme Libre 4-color pressed powder. I have the shade 03 Voile Rosé. I'm not going to really show you because mine actually fell on the ground and shattered. So that was really upsetting. But this is a really lovely powder. And I would say if you're someone that, again, maybe you just don't want to spend the money on the Cle De Peau Refining Pressed Powder because it is very pricey, I would say this is the next best thing if you are looking for something to, like if you wanted a pressed powder for under your eyes, because I actually do think this powder is finely milled enough to work under the eyes. And it's just a really nice pressed powder. It's just a really beautiful pressed powder. I can't really say anything negative about it, but it's just not my favorite out of these that I mentioned. Like these are kind of my top 5. These, the loose powder, and then all the ones I mentioned previously. And then this one just kind of sits underneath where it's like, I don't use it that often. I'll use it if I'm like running errands and I don't really care that much because it does blur the skin in a really beautiful way, but it's just more of a subtle blurring. It's not like super, super blurring like these products that I mentioned. It's just like one step beneath, but sometimes you don't want that completely blurred look. And again, it's just an easy powder to reach for. It brightens the skin. It has that little bit of blurring, but it's not going to, even though it has color correcting properties, I don't notice those color correcting properties. If anything, it might brighten the skin a little bit, but it doesn't actually change the color of my foundation, which I just prefer, especially if I'm just running out the door. So I reach for that on those occasions. Like if I'm going to the gym in the morning, this is probably the powder I'm going to use because maybe I don't want to reach for my most expensive powders. But it's still a really lovely one, and I would recommend it if you just don't want to spend the money on like the Cle De Peau pressed powder, but you're looking for a pressed powder to set your under eyes. Maybe loose powders are just a little bit too intense for you. This is definitely a really it's just a really pretty powder, and it's just really lovely, and I still really like having it in my collection. There is quite a strong fragrance with this one, so be aware that this is not fragrance free. And the Dior one is also not fragrance free, just by the way. This has a little bit of a fragrance to it. Oh no, I have one more pressed powder, and I think I am going to declutter this one. I'm trying to think of what other ones I decluttered. I decluttered the M Cosmetics pressed powder. I decluttered, maybe I'll make a list if I can think of them because now I forget. But this pressed powder from Westman Atelier, it is very pretty. It's a very creamy powder. This would be really beautiful if you have mature or super dry skin. And it does blur the complexion, but it blurs it even less than this Givenchy powder. So because it's not my most blurring powder, I don't reach for it all the time. It's a very nice, light powder. I would say the coverage level is very similar to the Sisley powder. I just don't reach for it all the time. It's a very nice velvety smooth powder, but because of that, I just feel like I have other powders in my collection that I'd like to use up before this Westman Atelier. And it's just sitting in my drawer. So like, what's the point of it? I never reach for it, like maybe once a year. And since I've decluttered my collection, I haven't reached for this once. So I almost feel like it's pointless to have. So I think I'm going to give it away to either my mom or my sister or some friends and see if they want it. So that was an easy one. But this Chanel powder, I'm just going to talk about this really quickly. I love this powder. However, it's only available in Canada and I believe in Asia. This is the Chanel Le Blanc Brightening Compact Foundation. This is so gorgeous. It really blurs the skin and it's beautiful. I have the shade B30. I'm going to link it for my Canadians. It's a really great powder foundation that, like I said, it blurs the skin and it does not look like powder at all. It's so beautiful. It's my favorite powder foundation I've ever used. And I've tried like Jane Iredale. I've tried Bare Minerals. I've tried so many popular powder foundations and they always just look too heavy on my dry skin, but this is beautiful. Again, not available in the US, so I just went over that one quickly. I want to talk about my last 2 pressed powders, and this is the Chantecaille. You can see it's not open because I went completely through my last one. I have used one up completely. This is a Chantecaille Lotus Perfect Blur Glow Powder. Oh, I got rid of all my Hourglass powders. I just don't like Hourglass powders on my skin. They always look heavy and a little bit cakey. But this Chantecaille is what I wanted the Hourglass powders to do. So I use this Chantecaille powder as a finishing powder. I use it at the end of my makeup application. Once I finish applying all my products, I'll just go in with a little bit of product and I will buff over the edges of everything. I will go over top of my highlighter, my blush, and my bronzer, all over the skin, just very lightly with that powder. And what it does is it softens the skin just ever so slightly. It makes sure that all the bronzer, blush, and highlighter are just blended together, so there's no harsh lines. There's no edges from where you've applied one product to the next. It all blends very smoothly and evenly, and your complexion just looks so smooth. This has a little bit of a glow to it, but it just adds that skin-like glow back to your complexion versus it being a matte product, which these products are going to add that blurred effect. They are going to mattify the skin. But if you have a completely matte face with no dimension, your skin doesn't look like real skin. So you're adding back that life by adding in a powder with a little bit of a sheen. But just powders with sheens, just that's what they do. They emphasize texture. But this has this very interesting property where it doesn't emphasize texture. It actually reduces the appearance of texture on the skin, even though there's a glow to this powder. It's so unique. I've never tried anything like it. It's so much better than the Hourglass powders, but I think it's discontinued. And I also have this Chantecaille Radiant Glow Blur powder that they released the year after. It's not as blurring as this one, but it's a good second place. I think this is actually still available at Beautylish, so I will link that there. But I think that's the only place it's available. And then I just have a few loose powders. I have these Huda Beauty. This is the Easy Bake Loose Baking and Setting Powder. I have it in mini sizes too. I used to really, really love this powder because it's very heavy duty. If you have oily skin, combo skin, you will love this. If you are in your 20s, you will love this. If you are in your very early 30s, you will probably love this. But now that I'm turning 35 and my skin is very dry, I think this is just a little bit too drying on my complexion now. And I'm not loving the way it looks, but it is very, very blurring. Like if I use it just in this area, it is so smoothing and blurring. However, just after a few hours, it starts to crack a little bit on me. So I think I am going to actually declutter these. I might keep one mini just in the shade Peach Pie just to have on hand and kind of keep playing with it. But I love this Cle De Peau one so much that I'm like, I only want to reach for this. So what's the point in having other ones? And I think this one might just be a little bit too drying for me, where this Cle De Peau one, it's not drying at all. It just looks like skin and it's so beautiful and I love it so much. So I just don't even feel like what's the point in having this? It's just kind of redundant. And then I have this Rodial Glass Powder, loose setting powder. And again, previous to the Cle De Peau one, my mom still hasn't tried the Cle De Peau one, but I am going to assume it's going to be her favorite. But this is my mom's favorite loose setting powder. It's just a really nice, finely milled setting powder that really does a great job of blurring the complexion. It looks really beautiful on the under eyes. It's a loose powder that doesn't look drying. So if maybe you tried the Huda Beauty and you really liked how blurring it was, but it was just too dry for you, this is basically like a hydrating version of the Huda Beauty. It is just more skin-like. It is more lightweight. It kind of adapts to your skin where this can kind of dry it out a little bit. So this would be my recommendation for you if you have a drier skin type, but you're looking, maybe the Cle De Peau is again just not available to you. I really like this Rodial one. It's really gorgeous. And then finally, I had the Guerlain Meteorites. This is the old formulation. And again, I think I am just going to get rid of this because they reformulated it, and the reformulated version is very shimmery. It has glitter particles to it, so it has intermittent shimmer, and you can see the shimmer sitting on your skin. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep the Chantecaille powders and use these as my glow powders. Now, Dior just released this pressed powder also in a glow version, but I don't like it as much as these Chantecaille powders, so I actually returned it just because these ones are baked, so they're a little bit harder to pick up, but that Dior one was even harder to pick up, and I just don't think it did the same blurring job that this Chantecaille one, so I'm still going to be on the lookout for a permanent replacement for this one, and let me know if you have any suggestions for that. But those are all my favorite blurring powders. Please let me know down below if you have any favorite blurring powders. I always love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like this video if you like it, and I'll see you in my next video.